Hello, hello, hello. Oh my God. Today is episode 4, 5. I've lost track, but I know this is going to be an amazing interview. Oh my God, I'm so excited. I'm interviewing my very best friend, Susan Chen, all the way from Singapore. So
Hi.
Susan, oh my God. Oh my God. I'm super excited. But also I know I kind of sometimes do put my best friend on a spot, so I do apologize in advance.
I'm used to it now. Throw at me. Come at me.
Oh, you can handle it. All right, I just want to make sure we share this online as well. See if we are on. Come on, Facebook. Oh, there we go. Da, 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 da. All right. So, generally with my speakers, I've got an interview form and ask them, and there is a question there that says, is there anything that not many people know about you? And Susan said, no, not something that she can think of. And I kind of know where that answer comes from because she's quite an open book. And generally, if you're in her close circles, you probably know a lot of the things. But there's one thing I don't think a lot of people actually know. So back in high school, and this shows we go way back.
Oh my God. High school. What year is that? I don't even remember. My God. Yes, high school.
Years ago, years ago. What was that Australian saying? I don't know, but years ago. Anyway, so Susan actually did conducting for her final year in high school. And I really have to say, back then, probably neither of us would imagine we are where we are today and doing what we do. So tell me about back in those days, what was your vision for your life? And would you ever envisage yourself having such a life, like traveling around the world, working in some of the most amazing international corporates, and now recently become a mum?
Oh, God. I think when we were 17, what we envisioned of our life is probably very far and very different to where we are now. But I think, at 17, when I did conducting, I think I was passionate about music. I thought, my life will eventually end up with some kind of music in it. But I think most importantly, if we talk about family, I actually remember I used to think I'll be married by 30. I will have 2 kids, there's certain, even though we're so Europeanized, I think we grow up, but we're still in a quite a traditional Asian expectation family. My parents have always expected me, regardless how I am, turn out to be a lot more Asian as an outcome, right? Marry a good Asian boy, get married at 30, have your second baby by 32. And a part of me, I think, thought I would live that vision, right? Because that is the vision that has always been communicated to me, expected from me. I still remember, when I got my PhD, my mother didn't exactly say, congratulations, you're amazing. She's like, oh, now you have a PhD. It's going to be even harder for you to find a man. So I think my vision of life has always been finding the balance between what is expected of me, what do people think is culturally acceptable, and being who I am, who I truly
Mhm.
am. And that has caused, I think, a lot of conflict even with my family. I feel like, what can I tell them, what can I not tell them? Will they support my life choices, moving away from home when I was very young? So yeah, I think the short answer is no. I've not envisioned my life to be this way, but I kind of just let it flow, let life take its course.
Actually, I want to talk about PhD because I would say back in the days when we were 17, and correct me if I'm wrong, studying really wasn't your thing.
No, I will be the last person anyone would think that will have a PhD. So
So what made you wanted to go and pursue a PhD?
If I think about StrengthFinder, because I know you're a big
Yeah.
fan of StrengthFinder, if you look at my top three strengths, they're all actually within the learning space, right? I have all three top strengths in learning: intellection, input, and I think the reason I pursue a PhD is because I am just always so goddamn curious. I'm just always curious about, why is the world the way it is? What shapes the outcome of whether it's organizations or individuals? And, you know, I've never had a dream to have a PhD, but I have always been so curious, and thinking, and I think PhD was just part of the way to construct my
Mm.
curiosity and communicate it in a structured way. And again, I don't think it's about being a good student. I was a terrible student. Angela knows, and her parents probably think I'm a bad influence. Well, actually,
Hey,
most of the
I
parents,
wasn't as good myself.
most of the parents think I was a bad influence. But I'm a party girl, enjoyed, socialization. Auckland was really small. We probably know all the people. Yeah, so, but I think that innate curiosity remains, and that shows in my strength finder, I think, and that I realize as I continue grow through my life, that becomes the fundamental of my pursuit of
Mm,
life, and mark the almost all the decisions that I make in life as based on that kind of curiosity.
that's interesting, right? We talk about strength finder. Like, I would say growing up, if anyone is to ask about, my strength finder compared to yours, they probably think I'm more of a person that wanted to study and all that sort of things.
For
But
sure.
now
You were a better student. You're way better than me,
I was
so
just a goody
definitely.
goody. Like, we talk about the framework of how family wanted to work. And I think that's in a way how we became really good friends, because we both kind of wanted to keep our family happy, but also there's a bit of a rebel living in us. I want to go back a little bit though, talk about best friends and having, common experiences. You were bullied when you were younger, and I was a part of that gang of Asian girls that bullied on you. How has that changed your life?
Wow, such a good question. And before I answer that question, I always reflect on, actually, I think it's really lucky when I was bullied, there was no technology in the same way. Like, I imagine children these days when they're being bullied, the internet, the way people bully people have gone high tech, like, text messages, phone call, Instagram, Facebook. The exposure of that bully, I imagine, is a lot worse. But coming back to your question, I was bullied in a much more traditional sense. Girls writing you terrible notes, they say mean things to you, they don't play with you during lunchtime. But if you ask me, how has that changed me, I think it has sort of, I mean, one, it shaped certain character of being more, what's a word, like, I'm very content with being on my own, because
Mm,
sometimes I think, I went through a period of being quite lonely. There wasn't really a lot of friends in school. So I think you're almost forced to be, one, very content with your own company, and then second, it is sort of using it as a opportunity to be stronger, right? To really
mm,
think about, what are your views, why are people bullying you, and what are the things that you sort of appreciate and understand through the experience and become stronger. I would like to think it made me stronger, but I have
mm.
always wondered, though, if I was born a little bit younger, as in 3 more years with the technology, would I have still the same experience of strength? Because
Mm.
I do imagine the way the children are being bullied, or kids, young adults, are being bullied, are much more different to the experience that we may have previously.
So, what would your advice be for the younger generations nowadays, if they are going through that challenge in life?
Oh God. Um, I wish it's as easy as to say, just
Mm,
don't look at it, right? Don't look at Facebook, don't be on the social media. But I think the only advice I can have is stop looking outwards, right? As in, what I've learned or realized is that a lot of these behavior is a reflections of your
Mm,
bully, is because of their own reflection of their own situation. They feel like they have to do that. So instead of internalizing, saying, I'm the person, I'm wrong, or there's something wrong with me, that's why they're bullying me, is to appreciate, to understand they are going through their own growth. They're going through their own struggle. That's why they're bullied. And I think if you recognize the other as a human being
mm,
going through struggle, how you will be able to internalize your own difficulty, I think will be slightly, easier. I'm not by all means say it's going to be an easy experience, but I think most people struggle is because they internalize that struggle. They think it's something wrong with them rather than
yeah.
to think about everything around them that may have constructed that situation.
That's such a good advice. Like so many, because I was bullied when I was little, and really immediately as a human reaction, you think, what's wrong with me? But really, once you understand, people who are either hurt or in fear would turn into bullies, and bullies are just really hurts people, because hurt people, right? And once you understand that, even though it might be a little bit hard to sort of get a grip on it, it's so much more empowering.
Absolutely. You know what? I'm friends with pretty much all my bullies from school. you know I have had these amazing conversations with people that sort of we talk about our growth from those period,
Mm,
and recognizing why do they, we even had a conversation, why did you bully me when I was young, and they're kind of like, you make us feel insecure, you seem to know what you're doing in life where we don't. And that
yeah.
shows is a reflection of their own struggle they're going through. It wasn't anything wrong with me. um and I think I appreciate that growth, conversation with people as they continue.
Mm. Do you think that's why you pick HR?
Ah,
And that was literally
yeah,
a light bulb moment. I was like, maybe that's why she picked HR.
I said, it's a good point. I always thought I want to do HR because it is actually through my life, I started with, actually I wanted to be a teacher, and then I want to be a psychologist, and I want to be a lawyer. And at some point I realized being a proper HR strategic role, actually you get to do all three. I can do employment law. You think about the psychology of your employees and leaders, and you also do training development. You can fulfill that
Mm,
teaching part. I think it was actually the best of both worlds, but also because I wanted to travel internationally. So I really wanted a career that allows me to do so. And I think people are just so fascinating that there's so much opportunity. And I think most importantly, I do believe in the innate human nature that can be shaped, that can be activated, which makes HR really exciting. Although no one ever think HR is that exciting, but I personally do, even after 15 years in HR. Yeah.
well, you're the person that changed my perspective on HR. Because for me, I think like many people, it's like HR, okay, you're hiring people, you're firing people, you hire more people, you fire more people, and that's it. And really,
Yeah.
from watching your growth and watching what you've done, and really like a lot of our conversations, whatever meet, evolves around HR, right? And you really open up my eyes and seeing your passion, how passionate you are about really, I think it's also educating people about how human resource management isn't just about the old-fashioned hiring and firing anymore. In fact, a lot of companies are starting to give their human resource managers really different names. We've got culture and people. Yeah, I think corporate in around the world really starting to see people as not just a resource, but actual human beings. So what do you say to that?
I mean, definitely there's a huge piece around educating people around you to understand. And I think it's funny because a lot of people, even with my friend or my husband, right, he tells me, before meeting you, I didn't think that anyone in HR could be doing the work that you do,
Yeah.
right? But at the same time, you make the most of it. They are still HR, they are working only on documentation. They are only very administrative, right? So there are still a lot of work as a profession that we have to work on and transform. And that's why I am writing a book about the role that I think HR needs to transform and think about and move forward. And a big part of that is educating through the work that we do, how they can interact with HR very differently and see the impact in a very different way, a very fundamental way. Yeah.
That is so good. By the way, you've mentioned a few things that's kind of in the pipeline, but I just really want to point out. So this show is called Range Woman, right? And a lot of my friends and people that work with me often say to me, how do you do all these things? Can you just stop doing new things? And I really want to point out, if you look at this later across the screen from me, look at Susan. Like, she is the kind of inspiration I have in my life, even though she is my best friend. But every time I speak to her, there's something new. There's something that she's looking to incorporate into her life. Like, some people may not know, you are a yoga instructor, you've studied interior design, and you don't just have one book in the pipeline. You've got 2 or maybe 3, the last time I checked.
Yes, I have a lot of ideas, a lot of things I want to do. So yes.
So how do you juggle it all, and how does that sort of juggling act helped you in motherhood? I'm not going to say helped, because I don't know whether it's helped or not. And in fact, this is the first time we sort of properly had a catch up since you've become a mom. So yeah, I know it's a long-winded question. There's a few questions in there, but first of all, how do you juggle your passion, your hobbies, and your career, and how has motherhood kind of changed that?
Wow, such a good question.
I'm very good
I
at
actually
good questions.
think, yeah, I know. That's interviews where you ask really good question and get people to really think about and deep. I think what helps me is, one, I think is constantly have a clear reflection and internal narrative. I think you need to know why you're doing the things you're doing. Right, and it may not be as basic. It shouldn't be actually as basic as, oh, I'm so passionate about yoga and therefore I'm gonna do it. I think we need to go deeper and have a clear narrative of why do we do the things we do, and then how do we prioritize. And I know that this is Range Woman, and we're talking to great women to encourage them to continue to do many different things. I also think it's important to be really honest to yourself, to say you can do many things, but you don't always have to do it all at once. Right?
Definitely.
And yeah, exactly. And I think that's a misconception. A lot of people say, oh, look at her, she's so amazing, she's doing all these different things, without thinking actually is about prioritization, right? My book, I've started and stopped and start and stop. My PhD took me like 7 years because I was working full-time, moved to 3 countries. But it's okay, right? Is saying to yourself that it's okay that you have all these things, you're passionate, that you're wanting to do. Sometimes you'll say, you know what, I will not work on this for the next 3 weeks because I've got other priorities, and you come back to it. So I always feel like there's almost this constant negotiation with myself to say, how do I prioritize? What is really important, right? And what matters the most? Like, for example, and I'll share this, and most people think it's a bit crazy. So I went back to work 2 weeks after giving birth, but not because I am so amazing. It's because I made a very conscious decision to say, one, because of COVID and because I'm in HR, the world is in shits, okay? Yeah. Everyone is in the panic mode. We are in the forefront of guiding an organization through transformation. As a leader, as someone in HR, I couldn't really justify to just say, bye, I had plans, I had baby, all of you can suffer on your own. So that's one. And then second, I said to myself, even though it's very common to take 3 months maternity when your baby's first 3 months, right? The reality, the first month you're just like a little blob of meat, and then they can't really interact with you, where I feel like when I take the leave a little bit later, when he's 5 months, 6 months, there's a lot more constructive and meaningful interaction that I can create with my son. And that was a trade-off I was willing to do. And I think having a clear narrative is so important. And don't let anyone else's narrative guide you, because everyone else just go, you're crazy. Why do you do it? Your son needs you. Oh, don't know, why are you so gung-ho? You're going to make it. If someone actually said to you, make everyone else look bad. And I was like, this is not about you. Excuse me, this is not about you. And then be really clear of what are the trade-off, right? Why am I doing what? Of course, that means, there will be different conversation I have to have with my husband of, how we're going to manage feeding, how we're going to do this, do that. But to juggle all these things requires you, again, to have that clear narrative of the why. And then that will help you to then talk to your partner in life on how do you manage your life together. I'm not the only one that has the baby. We have a baby together. So how do we make it work together? Right. A lot of, I think, strong range women think about they always have to deal with it all on their own as well. And absolutely. And I know, Angela doesn't think that way. We are a product of our partner and the relationship we have in life to help us to be that all well-rounded woman. And I think it's a beautiful thing. We should never say we will do this alone. We're not the dynamic woman by being alone, because we have our tribe, we have our partners, we have our circles, and that's what makes us, I think, as dynamic and be able to do all the things we want to do.
That is so good, because one of my biggest lessons, throughout my career really is to learn to ask for help and understand that we really don't have to do it alone. I wouldn't be able to publish my book without the help of Scott, and understanding that, by the way, mate, can't be cooking dinner every day. So we literally had, and I talk about this story a lot, we have frozen pre-prepared meal that delivered to our house for weeks, just because I have to go home quickly, eat my dinner and get the book done. But it's really about prioritizing. And I think, our career, and this is me speaking on behalf of you and me, has taught us a lot about prioritizing. When you're in a role where you have to take care of other people, it's really understanding what's your mission, what's your purpose, what's important to you, but also understand when it's time to come back to us, we also prioritize us as well.
Yeah.
So
definitely.
How is it, motherhood?
I don't think anything can prepare you for it. And I don't think I was fully, probably physically or mentally prepared. But it's good, I think it, again, allows you to, I like to think that I'm a little bit of quite a self-reflective person already, but then I realized being a mother requires me to completely rethink about what does that mean for me as a person, right? I think as a woman, as a mother, as a wife, as a daughter, as a friend, actually all these different roles that I play, I almost need to go through this deconstruct and restructure the understanding of that identity and how do I interact with these many different roles. It's been really busy because, like I said, I went back to work. The first few months was quite tough because I had a not so smooth delivery. So it sort of requires some, physical TLC as I continue to recover. With COVID, we couldn't get help, right? My family still haven't met him. Angela hasn't met him. If in normal times we would have been there already, or you have been here already, right? So definitely it was tough, but again, is how do we find the silver lining, right? And I say, given his work from home, we have a lot of great opportunity to spend a little bit more time with him because we're not commuting, we're not traveling as much. But overall, I think it's great. It's Angela will know I'm not the most patient person in the world. I'm very not patient. It's definitely not my top strength.
I know sleep's very important to you.
Yes, so I love my sleep, and I'm not very patient. Which both you don't get that much sleep, and then you definitely need to be more patient when you become a mother. So that's probably my biggest learning is I can be surprisingly patient. Where funny enough, my husband, who is the patient one, you know, they tend to, at times I'm surprised that he's less
Well, he's
patient. But I
losing shit.
wonder, exactly. But I wonder that's the difference between, you're the mother, right? You actually literally physically grow the child out of your body. That's not an experience that a man can fully ever understand, appreciate. So I think, yeah, that's probably my biggest surprise also is how much a little sleep one can function on. Like, as I speak, last night I had maybe about 4 hours sleep because he
Oh
didn't
my
have a
God.
great sleep last night. And I'm extremely patient because one thing I had learned, actually, that should be the same as being adults, right? But I don't know why we realize a lot more as a child is that however you're feeling, however you're projecting your emotion, your child can feel it. So if I am in a terrible mood and I'm like, go to sleep, child, he will never go to sleep because he can feel it. I'm just like, go to sleep, child, But if I'm just like, take a deep breath and say, I'm going to be in this moment with him, right? He's not sleeping because he's going through a moment in time that requires me. So I'm going to take a deep breath. I'm going to go in there and give him everything that I have to put him to sleep. And yeah, so I think that's probably my biggest realize is that any little emotion, the child can feel it, and I think that's the same as adults. We bring our emotions back home, whether it's work, whether it's whatever that's happening in our life, and that impacts other people. And I think it's not to forget how much we're all interconnected with people in the world.
Yeah. So how do you think, which of your strengths has helped you most with motherhood? Since we both love StrengthFinders so much.
Yeah. Actually, I actually think it's all the learning strength, the intellection, input, because I'm constantly trying to learn about children development, what are things I could do, and crafting sort of schedules that is right for him as he continues to grow so quickly and try to understand, because he can't talk, right? So understand his body language. So I will say the strength is probably input. Input is one of those strengths that it could be a curse, because that could also mean you're going down to a rabbit hole of reading so much, trying to, right? But input, I think, is a great. I like to think that I don't want to make decisions just because I feel like that's the right thing to do. But how do we take a much more data-oriented approach to make decisions, which is same thing as what I do, at work, which people are surprised, right? Data, HR, but taking a much more data-oriented approach in life and work and childbearing.
I find it just so fascinating because there's one thing I always say to people who first come into StrengthFinder is that you could have the same strength, but if you have a different combination, then you're going to behave very differently. So we do have one strength in common, and that's strategic.
I thought it's going to be command.
No, I don't have command at all. So I have connectedness, individualization. And so for me, I love when you talked about how you're not just going to feel into how you're going to make that decision, how you're going to do the things. Whereas for me, my strategy has always been, how do I feel? What does my gut say? And it's so interesting that you brought it up, because we both have strategic, but our strategies are very different. Whereas yours is a lot more learning based and mine's a lot more people and feeling based.
Yes. You're definitely much more feel than.
In saying that though, and you will know, I was not like this when I was younger. Hey,
No.
I almost feel like we had a body switch,
I know, right? I think so too. I was a lot more probably feeling based. But I wonder if a lot of when we were young, some of these fundamentals within us is sort of almost suppressed because we don't think that is, not as intuitive to us, or we don't think that is the right image to portray, or, because when we were younger, we all think being cool is much cooler, right? Being rational is much cooler rather than tapping into the much softer side of you and your intuition.
Well, speaking of the softer side, Again, this might be something not many people know of. Like, we've been friends since we were 15. So that's like, okay, help me do the math here. 20, almost 25 years. And we've been through quite a bit. There were times where, I think we've both struggled with relationships when we were younger. And really, I've always been so grateful for you. Like, you've always been there for me. And I just remember, because Facebook always pop up on the anniversary. And, we're almost like relationship support buddies whenever the other person needed.
It's true.
And it's just like, all right, one fight away. And thank God there's no
Yes.
COVID back in those days. And we're always there for each other. So tell me about this, finding love. What have you learned from your previous relationships, and what are some of your biggest learnings?
Well, from my previous relationship, so not even the one I'm in, the previous. Oh, wow.
Yeah. And then how has that helped you finding your soulmate?
Such a good question. So maybe as a background for the rest that doesn't know me so well, is that I have actually always been in fairly long relationship, even though I enjoy meeting people. There's boys around, but I've always been in actually long relationship. We're talking about 3 years, 5 years, right? But the funny thing is I married my husband and we got engaged only 5 months after we meet. But that's a second story. That's, I think, question to ask about what have I learned from my previous relationship. I think the biggest thing continued to be realizing that in most of the relationship that I'm still not 100% or be able to be just me and being appreciated for just me. Right? I am crazy. I have all these things I want to do. And quite frankly, not every man appreciates that, right? Some people feel insecure. I hear that quite a lot, right? You make us feel insecure.
You're intimidating.
Intimidating, exactly. So I think I have always almost to a certain extent tried to tone down whether it's my personality or my achievement or what. I'm going to put achievement in quotation because everyone defines that very differently in an outward sense. And yeah, I think I have sort of always never feel that 100% always being myself in a relationship. So if I've learned anything, it is how do you get to a point and just say, you know what, fuck it, right? This is me. This is me. This is what you're gonna get, and you have to accept me for who I am. And almost for me to stop apologizing for it. Why do we have to apologize for being busy, having options, getting promotions, buying that Louis Vuitton bag that we want? So what, right? So yeah, and I have to say, as I grow older, I also realize how important, as much as physical attraction that always plays a part in a relationship, but that important that mental connection, right? How do you find someone that truly connects with you intellectually? I think is actually extremely important. So I guess it's finding married man that you don't actually think he's sexy, but you think he's very smart, which then also comes to be very sexy. And that's kind of how I sort of feel about my husband when I first met him. It definitely wasn't he's not home by the way, so he's not hearing this. It wasn't
right, it's recorded.
Yeah, it wasn't kind of like, oh my God. I've always been a very love at the first sight. I'm the more emotional one when I come, I'll be like, oh, I can feel it from the first date. This is the one, it's gonna be exclusive. I don't do the whole date 5 people once and decide one. I'm very much like, we're gonna date, you know what, you better commit or you're out. So I remember meeting husband, it was not the way, right? I was like, God, that guy's really smart. I really enjoyed the conversation with him. But I'm not sure if there's that physical spark. Like, I wasn't too sure if he's physically attracted to me. I wasn't too sure if I'm physically attracted to him. But then, and then I realized I think the most sexy thing about a man is who can actually have a great conversation with you. And part of that is be able to appreciate what you bring on the table intellectually, your experience, and so on. And also, I think a very global citizen. I lived around the world a little bit, right? So I was, in London, in Norway, in Singapore, Indonesia. It was important for me to find someone who also appreciate that growth journey as I continue to move around the world. So my husband have lived in Africa, so that was probably a big plus.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yes, he lived in Africa for a year and a half for work. So I think that was a big thing where I thought, okay, this guy has some story to tell, right? To make that life decision, I also believe that some people have to go through that deep introspection to make these kind of decisions. And I think I always enjoy companies of people who go through that introspection process and to make life decisions.
So what are the typical household conversations in your household?
Oh yeah, it does get a little bit boring now we have kids, but no, it doesn't get boring, but definitely a little bit more like, why do we think that poop is that color, and do you really think should we worry about that poop? No, but what were we talking about the other day? Oh, I thought that was really interesting conversation we had the other day. So there was this podcast of this was it a writer or an actor? Anyway, some guy who talking about who interview their parents, but from a very objective manner, right? And we were talking about how we probably never think of our parents as an actual individual human being. We don't think about their life before us.
Yeah.
We don't think about who they are as a person. So we went into this deep conversation about how we think about different roles that people take, right? And how that perception, what kind of legacy or conversation we want to have with our children, what kind of conversation we want to have with our family. And so reflecting on, if I interview my father, what would he share about his lifetime, who's also in a very different social status at that time to my mother. So my father comes from a very poor background, where my mother was a middle middle class at that time. So, but I've never heard the real story of them as individuals. Right. So I would say that's kind of the those conversation. I will call them the turn on conversation, but then we got too tired. But that's another thing. But these are the conversations that you go, that's why I married this man, right?
Yeah.
Having these conversations, and then we reflect on, things in life, and I feel like I learned from talking to him, and that's important for me. How do you continue to learn? Not just about my husband, to anyone, right? Us having conversation, I'm always in awe, and I learn from the things that you were doing and that you're embarking on. So that makes it. That's why I keep the relationship going.
Well, I think a lot of guys talked about they want to date women with substance, but quite often, at least for me as well, I like talking to a guy with substance as well. I like to know that you're not afraid to having a friendly debate with me when it comes to subject matters, and it just makes it is a bit of a turn on conversation, isn't it? Because it makes you look at the person and go, okay, I do admire that part of you. You're not just the look, and you're not just my husband. You're actually, your brain actually turns me on.
Yeah, no, for sure. And again, if I reflect on motherhood, is that because now every day is so busy and there's just so much, it is about being the parent, that you sometimes forget that you need to be the wife, the husband to your other half as well. So those were good little moments of reminders.
So what's next in Susan's world?
I will be taking 2 months off.
Wow, that's very unusual.
That's right. But it's my maternity leave. So because I never took maternity leave, right, I went back to work. So I've decided, take that 2 months off spend time with my son, but also to finish the book that it is about transforming HR, and it is about having a different type of conversation between ourselves within the profession. So I'm really excited about to be able to really craft the time to do it. Unfortunately, we can't travel, so I don't think that, originally we would love to be able to travel and see our friends and family. So it's not going to happen, but good to make the most of it. I think that's one. And then second, I would love to, I'm hoping to do some teaching at the university, being a young lecturer. And also, I want to continue my yoga journey. So after being a mother, I actually appreciate how yoga can also support, I think, women during the pregnancy and after. And I always feel a bit off to try to do that without having been through the experience myself. I feel like that's not so credible, to teach pregnant women to feel your child inside you, and where I have zero clue what it feels like, right? So I'm hoping
I have
when
to
I
say that's
find
your
the time.
learner and input as well.
I know, right? It's all within the learning input. So I am going to hopefully to get my certification to teach prenatal, probably more prenatal, not so much postnatal. So that will be on my list to do as well.
Well, you're definitely an achiever in strength.
It's not on my top 5, but it's probably on my top 12.
Yeah,
Yes.
maybe. Which is also on mine as well, to be honest. And that's why I can always sort of kind of suss an achiever out. Wow, I have to say thank you so much for coming on and accepting this interview. And I have to say, I was nervous at first interviewing my best friend. I'm just like, I don't know. Like, I know a lot about you, but also at the same time, it's always, it's like you're presenting your best work forward. And it's like, you are such a humble human being, and being able to show you off to the world and say, I'm just so proud of you as my best friend. And I'm going to cry now.
Okay, don't cry, because you're going to make me cry. And then, we're all going to start crying at the end of this. But I want to thank you for allowing me to be in this space. I think, it has been really special to see you grow and blossom and create your tribe. I'm a stalker, so I know all these things that's happening in your world, that even though sometimes I don't get to participate as actively, but I've seen you blossom, and I think that is so important. And to close this off, as we have first started, I think that friendship is so important. I say to my husband all the time is that even though we are quite different in our life right now, but I know that you're the person that if I say, well, despite COVID, of course, with no COVID, I know that you're that person. If I call and say I need you here, you will be here, and I will jump on that phone to be with you. And it's quite special to have someone that you can say that you have that in your life, and you've done it so many times for me. So thank you for continuing to have me in this space.
Well, just like what someone once said, and I read this, like, good friends, we don't have to stay in contact often, but it's like whenever we meet, it's like you pick up the conversation from where we left off as if we've never parted. And you're definitely one of those friends. So thank you so much. And thank you everyone for watching. Now, before we go, so this week, if you share the podcast on social media, #rangewoman, this is what you get. So rose quartz crystal diffusers with lavender essential oil. So if you share this, and I would really appreciate it. It's my way of saying thank you for anyone who's kind enough to share our messages. There's so many important messages and learnings from each of these podcasts, and I really hope from people listening to this, listening to amazing women like Susan and all the other guests I have on this podcast, that we get to inspire more women to really follow their dreams. Even though we may not be able to have everything all at once, we can certainly have our dream life throughout this lifetime. So Susan, thank you once again, and thank you everyone for watching. Love you all. Bye.
Love you. Bye.